You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong.
Welcome to episode 159 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me as always is my podcast partner in crime, published author, writer, journalist, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hey, Dave.
Howdy, how are you?
Oh, I am just living the dream down here in South Georgia, let me tell you.
Yeah, I hear that you are.
Yeah, I've been dealing with kidney stones the last week, which is only second in pain of dealing with hospitals and doctors who supposedly claim to be able to fix said kidney stones in pain. So...
yeah, just give you a shot of morphine and send you home.
Pretty much. You know, it happened in the middle of the night it didn't happen in the middle of the night. It happened late on Sunday night, and I thought I could, fend it off until the morning. I just didn't want to go to the hospital no matter what, and I just tried to treat it at home and, self-medicate, and finally, at, 3 in the morning, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I've got to drive myself to the hospital. So, between COVID and then obviously, I live by myself, I was by myself in the emergency room, and I was there for 5 hours, and finally they got everything under control, and it was time for me to go, and they're like, okay, well, they just came in with my discharge papers and sent me on my way. Didn't check to see if I had a ride. They knew that I had driven myself because they asked me, and so I just went out, and my friend was coming to get me, but I just went out and sat on the curb, and then it started raining, so I went and sat in the passenger seat of my car because, I didn't want to be that person that gets a DUI for sitting in their driver's seat, because we've all seen that bogus stuff happen before. But yeah, it was the most bizarre thing ever. They just they just sent me out okay, have a good day. I bought groceries or something.
That's awful.
It was weird.
I got discharged after surgery one time for a shoulder reconstruction at a VA hospital, and they literally wheeled me into the lobby and left. And wife 1.0.
Very VA of them.
Yeah, and then wife 1.0 wasn't there yet. She was on the way, but I was at the VA hospital in Augusta, and she's driving from Atlanta, and they just kind of just wheeled me out and left me, make room for the bed.
Well,
you don't usually hear that with other types of hospitals because they're worried about their liability.
No, and I will say I've been pretty lucky. This is the first time I've had to have any type of medical issue throughout the pandemic at all, which is a blessing. So I haven't had anything elective or otherwise, but it was interesting being in there like that. And in those times, I guess.
Yeah, and you're playing hurt. You're playing hurt today. Because as we record this, you are going to directly, when you get off doing the show here, to the hospital to have a procedure done.
Yeah, that's how dedicated I am to telling people they're wrong.
Yeah, we'll wait. We'll wait to get the morphine tweets later.
That would be a nightmare.
Well, see, my pain pales in comparison. I built my dog a ramp because she's got a bad knee, and it's made of 2x12s. And I fell square on one of the upright 2x12s on my tailbone, and it amuses Connie to no end when I shift to my seat and yell, "Ow, my ass!"
Connie's not the only one.
Oh, no. Oh, other people's pain is hilarious. It's only funny until somebody gets hurt. Then it's hilarious.
Yeah. But I also feel like you kind of deserve that because, you yell at the dog sometimes.
I do. I get frustrated with her. So, she's 17 years old. She's elderly, and she doesn't always make it outside. So,
patience.
I know. I'm an awful human, and I feel bad when I do. But it's not like I'm beating her.
Yeah, but you should use She should feel like she's in a safe space. You should use a loving tone, an encouraging tone.
She'd be the only one I use it with.
Poor Connie.
Exactly. So did you see this week where Trump election fraud investigation in Georgia entered a new phase with a grand jury to be seated?
Yes. You know, even the people who feel like and this is obviously with regard to the Raffensperger call, or some of it is, but I feel like even the people who know that or who want it to be investigated can recognize that Fani Willis is really playing this up partisan in nature. Like, she's really fanning the flame.
Well, she's laying groundwork for next year. Hoping to flip the entire state blue.
I guess. I just, the grand jury, there were 2 grand juries that were supposed to convene, and they had a number of topics to discuss, not just Trump. Like, one of them was the investigation into why former U.S. Attorney B.J. Pack left so abruptly, because there's been claims that he was pressured because he wasn't doing voter fraud investigation things that the administration wanted, and just all kinds of claims. But it's different when a grand jury is not convened, or they're not, their purpose is not to indict someone. It's Jackie Johnson had done this with regard to dissolving the Glenn County Police Department, and again, their findings are only as good as the information they're presented, and that's all done in secret, and we don't know what they're presented. So, we're going to know what their findings are based on information that we don't know whether or not it was included or not. It's just kind of odd. And of course, it's not binding, but in this day and age, like, whatever they say is going to be clickbait for weeks.
Well, what does the state have to do with, even if Trump fired B.J. Pack, the U.S. attorney is employed at the pleasure of the president.
Sure.
And if it were any case for anyone to investigate it, it wouldn't be the state. It's a federal matter. Can't talk. Not that I ever can.
Well, she's also investigating a call with Lindsey Graham and stuff too, so she's really just trying to, again, be at the forefront here. And she's really the only one, to my knowledge, doing it anywhere. Like, it's kind of been let go.
Yeah, if we could stop making the news for all the wrong reasons, that'd be great.
Yeah, even Lynn Wood finally gave it up.
Ugh. Tom, I'm taking your role now.
Yeah. Just irritated grunts.
Yeah, that's great. Let's do an hour show of just irritated grunts. Do a story on ugh. But speaking of National Guard troops find their food hard to swallow. This made news last week. To feed the thousands of troops in D.C., quote unquote, guarding the Capitol, they gave an $11.5 million contract to Sardi's Catering in College Park, Maryland. The pictures came out last week of mold, metal shavings in the food, undercooked meat, and worms. Friggin' worms. And I was fairly dismissive of the whole, they're sleeping on hard floors. Like, I mean, that's what troops do. I mean, that's just part of it. But there's absolutely no reason for serving anybody. You would shut down a soup kitchen if they had undercooked ground beef and worms in the bread.
Well, it seems pretty prevalent. Like, this wasn't just one plate or one prepackaged meal. So I'm confused why it wasn't recognized or remedied.
They say it had. They say it's a low percentage. But several troops had to be seen by medics. Others had to go to an outpatient facility for gastrointestinal problems, and others just went out and puked. And look,
understandably,
yeah, and look, food is a huge morale thing. That's tons of studies have been done on it. It's one of the reasons that the military puts a lot of effort into making MREs palatable. Because nutrition's a huge thing. Now, I've seen some of the pictures of some of the guard troops, and they could certainly afford to miss a few meals.
That doesn't mean they should at the.
No, it doesn't.
The taxpayers are paying for this.
No, that's off the cuff. That's all,
right. I know.
But yeah, no excuse. And they're not being fired. They're not getting rid of Sardi's.
Why?
No telling. Now, they did say that a spokesperson for Sardi's Catering said that due to COVID-19 restrictions, the company is required to prepackage individual meals at its own facilities instead of setting up a kitchen on site for the troops. The article goes on to say it's unclear why the catering company can't use the D.C. National Guard Armory's kitchen or why the Guard can't facilitate a spot for workers to cook.
Yeah, it's not like they're in a war zone.
Right. And at that point, give me an MRE. I mean, I don't want to live. I have lived on MREs for a long period of time. I don't want to, but, and I don't know if I told you before the show, but I never had a bad meal in the Army. They were not gourmet. Mm-hmm. They were not great, but I never sat down with a plate of food wondering if it was going to kill me.
Yeah.
I always found it palatable. I mean, there were things I preferred over others, but food was always a high point of the day. No matter what you were doing that sucked, when you got a chance to sit down and eat was good.
Before the show started, you mentioned something about per diem and doing this instead of per diem. Do you know what the per diem is for food?
No idea. I don't know what the per diem is. Essentially what they've done is they've taken the per diem and given it to this catering company to provide meals. And I'm assuming...
I wonder whose idea that was.
I'm sure Sardi's. Look, if you hired this catering company to do your wedding and food showed up like that, you'd be furious that they'd get you. First of all, you'd want your money back.
Well, more than one instance of this in the actual restaurant would have them shut down.
Sure, and it goes back to the old saying: "Nothing's too good for the troops," and that's exactly what they'll get. So yeah, that one was that one bugged. It bugs me that they're there anyway. This is a mission going on 2 months now, I think. With an effort to extend it.
There was all that hype about a Thursday insurrection again, and it was radio silence.
What did they say? That Trump was going to come seize power.
Did they really?
That's one of the rumors floating out there amongst the QAnon people.
What was he going to do?
Exactly. First, they said he was not going to leave office, that he would seize power. And this idea is even less plausible. That he's just going to... what's he going to do? Show up and just toss Joe out?
Shoot his way in?
Yeah. Yeah, you got a 70-something-year-old guy strapped with M60 belts like Rambo. It's just stupid. There's nothing going on in D.C., and they've still got 5,000 of the 20,000 that were originally deployed guarding nothing.
And it sounds like it's costing us a fortune, and I mean, $11.5 million just for food, and it's not... we don't even know if that's like all of their meals or if that was just one. Right.
Then you add in they do have MREs. Because I've seen the pictures of essentially what they've done a lot of times is throw that food out and go grab an MRE. But it's absurd to even have them there. Look, I have no problem with deploying troops when they need to go be deployed somewhere, especially National Guard when there's a natural disaster, when there's a hurricane, flood, something like that. That's what the National Guard is for. But to hold them indefinitely, these guys and gals are giving up their civilian work to go sit and do nothing. It's one thing if you're in the Air National Guard, you're in a helicopter taking people off a rooftop, saving lives, but they're guarding Congress from nobody. Talk about another morale killer is not having anything to do, having an unclear mission.
Yeah.
And these governors should be calling the Guard troops back.
For an undetermined time, too.
Right. Honey, when you coming home? I don't know. Because I don't think it was supposed to be more than I think the original deployment was short term. We're going to secure the Capitol and secure the inauguration. That was it. And they just kind of, at this point, linger, and there's movements in Congress to extend it past I think it's mid-month or something like that. They're supposed to go home. And our governor already has called our National Guard back.
Good job, Kemp.
Do what?
Good job, Kemp.
Yeah. Give him a gold star. This is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Da-da-da! Last week in the Georgia legislature, they waited until day 27 to vote on a budget, Jessica.
They did. So as we record there, it's on the agenda to be, or the calendar to be, I guess, debated, which is a funny word because there's not much debate to it. But, the only thing they're called constitutionally to do is pass the budget. And here we are. Monday is crossover day, and I just don't quite understand it. But anyway, nevertheless, the $54 billion budget is on the agenda for Friday, and some of the expenses, I mean, we know there's waste and stuff, but some of the things that they have to fund and so, okay, let me back up. So I say 54 billion. You're going to hear your state representative say 26 billion or 25 billion, depending on what the actual number ends up being. I don't believe in saying that, just because it's only state dollars, that's the only money that it is in our budget, because I believe that federal pass-throughs, even if the federal government just passes the money to the state so the state can administer the program, that's how much is actually costing to operate our state, whether it's state ordered, local, or whatever. So it's $54 billion. But, reapportionment's coming up thanks to the census. And I was kind of shocked to see that they've already allocated $250,000 for legal fees. And that's not even if we get a couple lawsuits, we'll just have some money set aside. That's $250,000 for attorneys to review reapportionment stuff. And then the other thing that I saw as a huge flag, so I mean the budget's 112 pages, I think, and it's not always confusing to follow. So I just note things as it works through the process that I feel are maybe a little too high, or personally I think is not the proper role of government. But we get all this federal coronavirus funding and CARES Act, and we have to use $650,000 in state dollars to audit all the projects and ways that we've administered funds, which I feel is kind of steep.
You think?
Yeah, especially since our Department of Audits and Accounts, nothing against them, but it's not like they just do this stellar job of I feel if an independent firm did it, there might be more scrutiny applied, but it's just not. And I'll link to some of it on when we post the show, because I want to just read numbers to people. But if just some of the things that they're willing to do, we're going to talk about a tax cut that was passed by the House this week and everything, but we still are just hemorrhaging money. Like, there's the Columbia County Judicial Circuit. They want to add new judges. They want to, they tell, and the way that they do it is, like, I'm sure people remember the Patients First Act that we talked about in 2019. And if they didn't hear it on the show, they read about it. And it was an initiative by Kemp and his floor leaders back then. And, it was just this waiver for healthcare. But now, 2 years later, here we are. And we're talking like millions of dollars to implement it, like $660,000 for like just all they outline for is to implement the program. And then they want to have $500,000 to have a pilot program on the safe disposal of prescription drugs and things like that. And you're like, I thought pharmacies across America were already doing that. And the DEA has a National Drug Take Back Day. Like, just things where, it just doesn't make any sense to allocate more funds, but the state just hemorrhages money. And we don't allow our lawmakers to vote by agency or line item in the budget. Kemp can veto a single line item, but the legislature, they have to vote on the budget as a whole. So, and they don't, if they don't agree with something, it's either yes or no. And only a handful of our lawmakers are on the budget or appropriations committee. So it's like a very small group of people making all the decisions. And you're an a-hole if you vote against the budget because, there's things for children and sick people in there. So how could you do that?
Not just that. If you vote against the speaker, you are on the outs.
Well, yes.
And that's just the way it is. So he rules the House with an iron fist.
Yeah, the House that costs $20 million to operate. Like, what the hell, man? Like, that's not even the legislative salaries and stuff.
20 mil.
$20 million.
I'll tell you what, give me half of that and I'll run it.
Yeah, because I'll send everybody home.
Yeah. Lock the doors, turn out the lights.
It's just disheartening, I guess. Like, every year, there's not a whole lot that changes. Like, different departments get a little bit more money here and there, and it's mostly just shuffling, and nothing is earth-shattering. Last year with the cuts, yeah, there were some earth-shattering talking points, but generally it's the same. But it still just never ceases to amaze me the way that they come up to raise money. Like, $3.5 million to help people, more money, like $3.5 million more, whatever the frick it's supposed to be, to help people with low income household incomes pay for childcare. Okay, well, what about everybody else who isn't considered low income, but it just makes me sick.
Yeah, well, that goes back under not the role of government.
Right.
So we have the omnibus voting bill, House Bill 531 by Barry Fleming.
Yep. Barry, I crafted the legislation to buy the voting machines that everybody hates, and now I'm quote fixing it, Fleming. Of course, this was like opposed by all the Democrats. I think it passed 97 to 72, but it was like it was from the result of the special committee on election integrity in the House. And so, we've talked about a few of the little tidbits here and there in the Senate, but this was like all of the ideas in one mega bill, with the assumption, which I don't remember if we talked about it on the show or if it was just in chatter, but with the assumption that there's going to be a conference committee between the House and the Senate on different ideas, and they'll eventually pass like an amalgamation of these voting initiatives. And some of them, it's like, why weren't you doing this before?
Well, in addition to requiring a photo ID for absentee voting, limits the amount of time voters have to request an absentee ballot. Restrict where ballot drop boxes could be located and when they could be accessed. And limit early voting hours on the weekends.
And there were protests at the Capitol Monday, a couple dozen people who were mostly outside due to the pandemic, thanks to, the shuttering of the People's House. But they said that we're rolling back access, and that our state is already in line with 33 other states in their voting laws.
I don't know what this fixes.
It doesn't fix anything. I don't disagree with the ID for absentee ballots. That I feel like, I don't think a signature verification is sufficient when you're talking about stupid humans manually reviewing them. But all of the other stuff, it's not rolling back access, because the access is still there and you still have election day as well, but it's not resolving any of the concerns from November.
Right. Yeah, I don't really care about the photo ID one way or the other. As far as absentee voting, it's fine. Stick a photocopy of your license in there. All this is going to do is immediately trigger a lawsuit.
Well, sure. Which we seem to lose at alarming rates, regardless of what it's about and regardless of who the Secretary of State is. And, Raffensperger put out some spicy, infographic quote where his office said, "We've been reading all the legislation, and when we see one we'll vocalize our support." Well,
not his place.
Well, yeah, but also, that was just a passive-aggressive way to say, we don't want any of these things, and, I'm not really inclined to take someone's advice when they were a piss-poor lawmaker, Brad.
But he's a hell of a marketer. Just pay people to put your signs out.
Well, anyone can be a hell of a marketer with enough money.
That's right. So yeah, spent an awful lot of money getting a job that doesn't pay half of what he spent.
Makes you wonder.
Oh yeah, he was planning on using it as a stepping stone. Not that Raffensperger's asked me anything, but he probably should just go ahead and step aside in 22 and let somebody else run.
He's not going to.
I know he's not going to. He still thinks he's heading to the governor's mansion. But
in 2022?
No.
Oh.
He thinks it's a stepping stone. You do 2 terms as Secretary of State, and then you're a shoo-in to become the governor. And I think he's such a lightning rod. Not only do the Democrats dislike him, but there's a huge Republican pushback on it. So he could get primaried.
Oh, I totally expect that. And I think he does too.
Hell, half the people thought they were voting for Cliff from Cheers.
Yeah. There are people who... Yeah, I feel like he wouldn't be bringing in Dominion and these people to do informational sessions now after the fact if he wasn't anticipating some serious blowback come, early next year.
Right. So he may not survive the primary.
From your lips to God's ears.
Right. Well, let us have somebody good in there. His messaging is all over the place. I don't know.
It's not even that for me. For me, it's the lack of transparency from the office, the violation of the state sunshine laws when it mattered most, and prior to that, the effort to contract people out who were previously employees, which is one of the measures. I think again, I apologize for my terrible memory this week, but there was a bill to require election supervisors with the Secretary of State, any person overseeing elections, had to be an employee and could not be a contractor or subcontractor or anything other than a full-time employee, which I do agree with, because from the perspective of you have to be able to access their stuff, and you cannot access their stuff when they're not employees.
Right. Now, the same day, we had the Senate Ethics Committee approved a Republican-backed bill that would limit who can vote absentee in Georgia to those 65 and older, people with a disability, and people who will be away from their precinct on Election Day.
I don't know. I don't disagree with that.
I
feel like that's like the least likely to actually gain final approval, but I feel like it's the most legitimate. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but Raffensperger's office put out some statement about how it's too hard for the election officials to run all these elections at the same time with the runoff and counting ballots and everything. Well, the number one way to cut down on counting ballots is, one, not to send everybody a damn absentee ballot application, and two, don't let everybody be eligible to cast an absentee ballot. Like, you spend all this money on voting machines, use them.
You have early voting. This proposal actually solves a problem, or curbs a problem, and the problem of vote harvesting. Yeah, this actually addresses an issue that happened. You know, these other proposals of wanting to put not U.S. citizen on driver's license and stuff like that, these aren't the problems that we see in mass. I'm not saying that there aren't people who shouldn't be voting the vote, but in the biggest problem are the people who are out vote harvesting. And I don't know what the pushback is on that, other than perhaps some of these reps do it themselves, and they don't want to hurt their reelection efforts.
Well, of course. I mean, of course, but just, you know, it's a race thing. Renita Shannon, who's in the House, said she called it pathetically obvious that this is about Trump, and because Democrats flip the Senate and Republicans are in a political death spiral, and quote, now they're doing anything they can to silence the voices of black and brown voters specifically because they largely powered these wins. False. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Like, not even, I have not heard anyone, and there are racist people all over the internet, and I've not heard anyone say, we need to change our voting laws because of black people.
No, it's all Shane Hazel's fault for losing the Senate. Remember that?
Yeah. Forgot about that.
No, how about the Republicans run some decent candidates? I mean, that'd be a shocker, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but, I mean, Democrats saying that this is all racially motivated does nothing to help their cause. No, and it's gotten to the point where being called a racist means you're doing something. But that goes back to one of the memes that's been around the internet, that everything I don't like is racist. Yeah.
Wanting to have integrity in our elections is not a race issue. Wanting to make sure that people who actually want to vote is not a race thing.
Well, I feel like Democrats at this point would love to just have qualifying, and then, like, the day after qualifying, allow people to start voting, and then just run it all the way to Election Day.
You know,
and if they want to do that, that's fine, but just make Election Day the day after qualifying.
Make Election Day the day after you pay taxes.
Well, you can line it all up just nice and pretty right there, you know, for ease of everybody's access to make sure they can get to all their government offices on the right days. But, you know, it will never be enough. We've had this conversation. It will never be enough access to satisfy the Democrats, and Republicans teeter back and forth on what is enough and what they're willing to concede, because, you know, a lot of these measures were passed with their consent when they were either not in the majority or right after they claim the majority in the state level, and they're just not really sure what they believe. So that creates some problems as well.
By all means, let's turn it into American Idol. We can have Ryan Seacrest host the election, and everybody just calls in their votes. This is such a slap in the face to people who risked their lives to go vote. I go back to Iraq and Afghanistan, and these people literally risked their lives to go vote. And Americans can't get off their damn couch. And that's oppression. If I say you have to go to a designated place to go cast your vote, that's oppression.
In a 3-week period.
You're absolutely right. In a 3-week period. I don't like early voting because you lose information. Information comes out afterwards. Think about Jim Beck. If 50% of the votes are in, and then you find out about his pending indictment, he's already elected. Hell, in Nevada, they elected the guy who owned the Bunny Ranch. Can't remember what his name is. He was dead.
Right.
That information is kind of useful. And look, and those people could have very well have elected him knowing that the seat would be vacated because they didn't want the Democrat to win. That was better to have a special election for that seat than to let the opposition win. But information is useful. And hell, I once voted early in a presidential primary, and by the time the election came around, the guy I voted for had already dropped out.
Sure.
So
it is not always big information like that. I mean, I remember in the Purdue-Kingston runoff in 2014, I cast a ballot. I don't think I would have, there were other races on the ballot at the time too, but I don't think I would have cast a ballot for David Perdue because I just wasn't comfortable voting with him in that election cycle. But I probably would have cast a blank ballot on that race, and I voted early because I was working on a campaign and I wasn't going to be there. But I voted for Kingston, and there were some fundraising things that came out afterwards, and I found out it was the day after I voted that I found out that Kingston had received tons of money from a bunch of organizations that I opposed, to include private prisons and things like that. And they weren't on his disclosures leading up to that point, and I would not have given him my vote. So it's not always big things oh, they're going to die or they're going to be indicted. Sometimes it's just political or principle things that should matter. But you're talking about most of the American population that votes on emotion and the way that people make them feel, as opposed to the environment that a politician will help cultivate so that people can be in charge of their own emotions and feelings. But
right,
I digress.
He tweets mean things at night. Mm-hmm. Oh, and we have a milquetoast quest for fame. Ralston is proposing free IDs for everyone.
This is insane to me. Not even because it's free. So these are, we're not talking about the free voter ID that you can already get. We're talking about the $32 real ID that comes with the hologram and everything that you can use to board an airplane. That is beyond just voting. And he's pushing this. And in his statement, he literally said, "We have heard from Georgians who are concerned about fees associated with identifying or obtaining voter identification. While Georgia already offers a free voter ID, this state ID card is more useful and will make it easier for Georgians to not only vote, but to use the ID to open a checking account or show identification to a TSA agent at the airport. Ultimately, we want to make getting a government-issued photo ID as easy as possible, and removing this fee is one way to demonstrate our commitment that everyone has the tools necessary to vote in Georgia." You stupid son of This has nothing to do with being able to vote. If you literally said twice in your own statement that you can already get an ID to vote, and then you say that you want to make it easier to vote, so you're going to give them another ID that makes it easier to open checking accounts and get on the plane.
Okay, if you don't have $32 for an ID, where the hell are you flying?
I don't know, Dave.
What are you going to put in your checking account? You don't have $32.
It's just
and
theater.
it's already out there to make sure that the ID law is not a poll tax. They already offer a free voting ID. And I don't know
it just is only for voting.
Right, and I don't know the DDS is swimming in cash anyway.
They just voted last week to raise the cost of our licenses because they are losing money on them. Literally, the House voted last week. It's insane. So the rest of us have to pay more so that people who can't open a checking account and can't get on an airplane with their voter ID card that's free can get a free ID to help them vote. Because David Ralston said it's about the commitment to make sure that everyone has the tools necessary.
Jesus. But wait, there's more. Well, for them, not us.
Yeah, they want a pay raise again. This is the third year in a row that they've pushed it. And Ralston, again, is saying that, they haven't had a pay raise since 1999, and that's too long for people to go. Well, I would argue that 1999 to 2021 is too long for someone to be in public office. And so if they're, waiting for their COLA adjustment, maybe just resign and go find something else to do. They want to raise it from the 17,000. Well, it's a little less than 17,000 because they cut it last year during the pandemic to do, a show of benevolence. I don't know. But they want to basically bump it from approximately 17,000 to 29,900.
Yeah, and one of the quotes is that the poor pay keeps good people from running for office. And, I put my own note on there, snob time for Dave. Who the hell is not motivated by 17,000 is motivated by 30?
Yeah, I don't know.
Damn, these sons of spending $150,000. The difference between 17 and 30 is not what motivates people to run for office. What keeps good people from running for office is the process of campaigning, the nasty nature of politics. What keeps good people from running for office? Find one. Jesus H. Christ. You got people who are out of work and they want to give themselves a raise for a part-time job. 40 legislative days. They already get per diem. They already have a spending account. They can already use campaign funds for related expenses while in office. Do I really want the guy in charge of a $54 million budget? Billion dollar budget who really needs that extra $13,000 to make ends meet? Well, you can't work on your own budget. What the hell you can do in the state?
Well, I've always looked at it as like the 17,000 is not a salary. It's like it's a fee. It's compensation for the time you spend there and for what you do. But I've never looked at it as like a salary. Like, who expects somebody to be a part-time legislator and live off of that income?
Well, if you are living off that income, you're doing it wrong. Or you're doing it really right. You should live off
the income if you want to. Like, I'm not I'm not judging that people need it to supplement. Like, they may work something out with their employer where they're not compensated during that time, or like I don't know what people's situations are. I'm not saying that they're not entitled to. I think when everything else is compensated, like build them a dorm and make them stay in some college-esque thing, and like you could do things differently if you really wanted to, and make it more. It's still public service at the end of the day. But the idea that this is supposed to be some like fair market value legislator entitled to the same cost of living increases that a teacher or a police officer or any bureaucrat that actually works, God bless them, 40, how many weeks a year? 50?
Yeah.
I don't know what regular people do for work, but...
Oh, look, it increases a bunch of salaries. Not the governors. Attorney General would get a $25,000 pay raise from $139 to $165. Secretary of State
not worthy.
Gets another $25,000, almost $123 to $147. Gary Black would go from $123 to $144 at Agriculture. Insurance Commissioner. Remember, we're paying 2 insurance commissioners from $120 to $143. Labor Commissioner, $122 to $146. State School Superintendent, $123 to $146. And Public Service Commissioners from $121 to $138.
Well, and this is sponsored by Wes Cantrell, who is like the disappointment of a lifetime. Like, he came in as a Cherokee County conservative when Michael Caldwell and Scott Turner, who are not there any longer, and thank God Scott's not, but like all three of them are these uber conservatives, like limited government, free market principle people who just saw government as supposed to be like the smallest thing ever. And Wes he just completely like lost his direction, and he just sucks. But one of his arguments is that the size of the legislative districts have increased since the last pay raise. Like, they're representing more people and stuff. I mean, sorry there, buddy, but you representing 20,000 more people or 50,000 more people,
you're not getting paid per capita loss.
Right, like this isn't. You do nothing different, especially when most of them don't give a damn about their constituents. Oh my gosh! So we've expanded the size of districts. So on Saturday morning, 1 week you have to drive to the east side of the county for your GOP breakfast, and then on the next Saturday you have to go 15 miles across town. Oh my goodness! Well, you poor thing.
And this would index the legislative pay to inflation. So this is a one-time. This is a one-time. It will guarantee raises in perpetuity.
Well, that's what they want to do, because look how unpopular it is every time they come back.
Yeah, and I use a little bit of hyperbole. We do have good people up there, but they
like
they get run off. They don't get run off because of the pay. They get run off by the process. If you dare say anything against the speaker, your district is punished. That any bill you sign on to is dead. It's just not going to come for a vote. It'll get lost in committee, because that's the power that the speaker wields with that gavel.
It sucks.
Do you see it now?
I do see it. Yes, I do see it passing. If it was going to pass, it would absolutely be this year for a couple reasons.
Off election year.
Well, yes, that. Also, the House has already passed an increase on the standard deduction for income taxes for individuals. They've passed like 4 relief acts for, they're not for small businesses, but they're for corporations. And when you put it on a mailer, they always just say they lie. So they've done some relief on corporate taxes on that side. And what better time to say, we slashed the state income taxes by $140 million. Life is so great. We've cut the budget. We're restoring funding. And so it's a great time to give us a raise.
Well, and let's not forget the bosses who get raises. The lieutenant governor would go from $91,000 to $135,000. The speaker's salary would go from about $99,000 to $135,000. The House Speaker pro tem and the Senate President pro tem will get an extra $6,000 a year over regular legislative salaries. And look, these guys all have jobs. Well, lieutenant governor is I believe full time, but the speaker has a law firm.
Allegedly,
he doesn't go to court. But he just keeps those $10,000 checks rolling in, so you don't ever have to go to court and answer to the alleged victims. Not that I'll ever let that go. But these are part-time jobs, and you do it out of service. I mean, do you ever want a candidate? I guess it'd be the most honest candidate ever. Oh, well, sir, why do you want to run for office? Well, I lost my job last year, and I could really use the extra $30,000.
I'd probably vote for him.
Yeah, and so would I. Like, hell, somebody who's honest. I dig it.
Yeah, it's just, it just make me sick.
Well, real quick.
And the fact that they would never have to come back again to ask unless they wanted to do a larger,
right,
swoop is just sick.
Yeah. They're going to take the political beating for it once. And the folks that have to vote against it can vote against it, and it'll pass by a slim margin if it goes. Because there are a lot of conservative districts where candidates promise, I will never vote to give myself a pay raise. They never say, I won't take the pay raise. So we have a bill making porch piracy a felony coming out of the House. Well, House Bill 94 passed 101 to 67.
Yeah. This is like, they want to make it so that if you steal packages off of somebody's porch and you trespass on their property to get it, it's a felony with mandatory prison time. I like, and you have to, there's a minimum threshold, like they have tiers. And so like if you have, I think it's like from 3 different addresses, because currently this is under just regular theft, and depending on what's in the package and the cost, like it could easily be a misdemeanor. And so they want to make it, but I don't know anyone who steals packages off of porches, but I'm inclined to think that they don't do it because they're not afraid of getting caught, or I don't think they have it. I don't think they are like, oh, well, it's only a misdemeanor. I just don't. They're thieves.
Yeah, and Lord knows I hate a thief. But again, I don't know what problem this solves. State Rep Chuck Efstration, again, star of the show, said legislation would target criminals who are stealing packages from multiple houses. I like your quote here, but he also said the stripper tax would help fight against human trafficking. Yet here we are.
That was deemed unconstitutional. So I'm not a fan of anything with a mandatory sentence. I don't support stealing things off of people's porches, but zero appreciation for a mandatory sentence. And should someone steal a package off somebody's porch? No, but should somebody who steals something and it has a box of 10 or 10 bottles of nail polish in it versus a bunch of camera equipment or medical prescription, I mean, I know they don't know what's in the package, but I just don't see it. I don't see how you can, when the rest of our theft statutes identify the cost and possibly the item and how it was stolen, whether you took it by like nefarious mechanisms or whatever. I mean, and then now all of a sudden we're gonna have porch piracy. If you just take a box, you're going to prison. I'm not a fan.
Again, I don't know what it solves. The difficulty is not the sentencing; it's finding them. Even with a Ring camera, usually the video is too poor to identify a suspect. I mean, does this mean that the police will look harder into theft if it's a felony? I don't know what the working theory is other than revenge. And look, I think a homeowner ought to be totally justified in beating the living snot out of somebody who comes onto their front step to steal something from them. And I wouldn't shed a tear if one of these porch pirates stepped in a bear trap. Because you're right, it's a criminal grab bag. They don't know if they're getting your insulin that got delivered, or if they're stealing kids' socks. They have no idea. So I just don't know which problem it solves. Because to your point, again, violating the name of the show, they're not thieves because it's only a misdemeanor. They're thieves because they're scumbags.
Right.
And that's just the way it is. And yes, it's a problem. It's certainly a 21st century problem that's come along with our online shopping. But Jessica, we have to get you into surgery. Do you have any closing thoughts?
What a way to end the show. No, I mean, I don't really have any closing thoughts. I think it's great that I was able to put 55 minutes worth of thoughts together in a row right here this week. So. Yeah.
And I know you don't feel well. Thank you for playing hurt.
Well, I couldn't let people listen to just you.
Who would? I can't get anybody in my own house to listen to me by myself. If you like what you heard, please like us and share us on social media. If you don't like what you heard, do it anyway. Interact with us on social media. Send us your notes on the show. No more than 2 complaints at a time per Jessica. So, for Jessica Szilagyi, for Eric Cumby, our editor, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.